A dark car drives down a dirt trail to the edge of a dense forest. Two children, dust-covered and staring blankly, are left tied to a thick tree without a word. The engine is still warm when the man gets back in and disappears down the road. The treetops stand still, but a distant neigh echoes through the branches. Two white horses emerge from the thick green, staring at the girls without moving. One steps toward the rope. The other holds the silence. And in the exact moment, the first knot snaps, something inside changes forever. Love stories with animals? Then subscribe now and never miss one. Thanks for being here. Now, back to our story. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy of pine trees in the remote forests of northern Montana, casting dappled shadows across the forest floor. In a small clearing where the undergrowth thinned and wildflowers dared to bloom, two small figures sat motionless against the rough bark of an ancient oak. Emma and Lily Parker, sisters aged 9 and 7, had been there since dawn, their small wrists bound with coarse rope that chafed against their delicate skin. Their once bright eyes now appeared vacant, staring unfocused at the forest floor covered in pine needles. Tear tracks had dried on their dirt-smudged faces, leaving pale streaks down their cheeks. Their clothes, a faded blue dress for Emma and overalls for little Lily, were torn and soiled from their struggle. The forest's usual symphony of birdsong and rustling leaves seemed to have fallen silent, as if nature itself was holding its breath in witness to this cruelty. Hours had passed since Uncle Ray had left them there, his final words still ringing in their ears. "You'll stay put and think about what you've done. I'll be back when I'm good and ready." But the afternoon sun was now beginning its descent, and there was no sign of his return. Emma shifted slightly, wincing as the movement sent sharp pain through her shoulders. "Lily," she whispered, her voice hoarse from crying, "are you okay?" Lily didn't respond immediately. Her lower lip trembled before she managed to speak. "I'm scared, Em. My hands hurt real bad." "I know, sweetie. Mine too." Emma tried to stretch her fingers, which had begun to grow numb. "Just hold on a little longer. Uncle Ray will come back soon." Even as she spoke the words, doubt crept into her heart. Their uncle had been drinking heavily since their mother's disappearance 3 months ago. His anger had grown day by day, his patience wearing thin until the smallest infractions, a spilled glass of milk, a forgotten chore, would send him into a rage. Today's punishment had come after Lily had accidentally broken one of their aunt's old porcelain figurines while dusting. Uncle Ray had dragged them both from the small cabin, deaf to their pleas and promises to be better, to be perfect. Emma had tried to protect her sister, earning herself a harsh slap that still stung hours later. As the shadows lengthened across the forest floor, a new sound broke through the silence, the soft crunch of leaves under careful paws. Emma tensed, instinctively trying to pull Lily closer, despite their restraints. Through the undergrowth, a pair of amber eyes appeared, watching them intently. A wolf emerged from the shadows, its silver-gray coat catching the fading light. It was a magnificent creature, lean but powerful, with an intelligence in its gaze that made Emma's breath catch. "Em," Lily whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Is that—" "Shh." Emma hushed her sister, not out of fear, but a strange, inexplicable sense that this encounter was important. The wolf stood perfectly still, assessing them from a distance of about 15 feet. It lowered its head slightly, nostrils flaring as it caught their scent. Behind it, a second wolf appeared, slightly smaller, with a darker coat. They moved, with a grace that belied their wild nature, approaching slowly, deliberately. Emma had heard stories about wolves, fearsome predators that hunters spoke of with both respect and fear. But these creatures didn't seem threatening. There was a curious gentleness in their approach. The larger wolf came closer, its steps careful and measured. Emma held her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. The wolf stopped just a few feet away, its amber eyes meeting hers. In that moment, something passed between them, a recognition, an understanding that transcended the barrier between human and animal. "They're not gonna hurt us," Emma whispered, a certainty in her voice that surprised even her. The wolf tilted its head, as if confirming her words, then moved closer still. To the girl's astonishment, it began to sniff at the ropes binding Emma's wrists. Its companion approached Lily, who remained frozen in a mixture of fear and wonder. The wolves circled them, examining their bonds with what almost seemed like concern. Then, without warning, the larger wolf grasped the rope binding, Emma with its powerful jaws. The girl flinched, expecting pain, but the wolf's movements were precise, controlled. It tugged and pulled at the fibers, working methodically until the strands began to fray. The second wolf mirrored these actions. With Lily's bindings, minutes passed as the wolves worked, their determination unwavering. Emma felt the rope loosen, then give way entirely. Blood rushed painfully back into her hands as circulation returned. Beside her, Lily gasped as her own bonds fell away. The sisters stared at their saviors in disbelief, rubbing their raw wrists. "How did they know?" Lily whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "How did they know we needed help?" Emma shook her head, unable to explain the miracle they had just witnessed. "I don't know, Lily, but I think they want us to follow them." The wolves had stepped back, watching the girls intently. The larger one turned, took a few steps toward a narrow path through the trees, then looked back expectantly. Its meaning was unmistakable. Emma rose on shaky legs, helping Lily to her feet. "Can you walk, sweetie?" Lily nodded, though her face was pale with exhaustion. "Where are we going?" "Away from here," Emma replied, a new determination in her voice. "Somewhere safe." The prospect of venturing deeper into the forest with wild animals should have terrified them, but fear had been replaced by an inexplicable trust. These creatures had freed them when humans had bound them. They had shown compassion when their own blood relative had shown none. As they took their first tentative steps down the path, the setting sun broke through the trees, bathing the forest in a golden glow. The wolves padded silently ahead, occasionally glancing back to ensure the girls were following. Emma held Lily's hand tightly, drawing strength from her sister's presence and from the strange turn of events that had given them an unexpected chance at freedom. They walked for what seemed like hours, the wolves leading them deeper into the forest. Emma's legs ached, and Lily stumbled frequently, but they pressed on. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped, and the girls huddled closer together for warmth. The wolves seemed to sense their fatigue and slowed their pace, allowing the sisters to rest periodically. I'm so tired," Lily whispered during one such break, leaning heavily against her sister. "And I'm hungry." Emma stroked Lily's tangled hair, trying to comfort her despite her own exhaustion. "I know, sweetie, but we can't go back. We have to keep going." As if understanding their plight, the larger wolf disappeared briefly into the undergrowth, returning minutes later with a small rabbit in its jaws. It laid the fresh kill at Emma's feet, then backed away, watching them. Emma stared at the offering, tears filling her eyes at this unexpected act of provision. She had never skinned or prepared an animal before, but necessity was a powerful teacher. Using a sharp stone, she awkwardly prepared the rabbit while Lily gathered twigs and dry leaves for a fire. Emma had watched Uncle Ray start fires enough times to understand the basics, and after several attempts, she managed to create a small flame. The smell of cooking meat soon filled the air, and the girls ate hungrily, the wolves watching from a respectful distance. When they had finished, Emma carefully extinguished the fire, conscious of the danger of forest fires. "We should sleep," she told Lily, who was already struggling to keep her eyes open. "The wolves will wake us if there's danger." They settled beneath a large pine tree, its lower branches creating a natural shelter. To their surprise, the wolves moved closer, lying down on either side of them. Their warm bodies provided comfort against the night's chill, and Emma felt a strange sense of security in their presence. For the first time since their mother had disappeared, leaving them in the care of an uncle who resented their very existence, the sisters slept without fear. Morning arrived with birdsong and soft light filtering through the trees. Emma woke to find Lily still asleep, curled against the smaller wolf, her small hand resting on its fur. The larger wolf was already awake, its amber eyes watching over them. When it saw that Emma was awake, it rose and stretched, then padded to the edge of their makeshift camp, looking back with that now familiar, expectant gaze. Emma gently roused Lily, and they continued their journey, following their silent guides through the wilderness. The forest began to thin, and Emma noticed signs of human presence, a weathered trail marker, the distant sound of a vehicle on a road. The wolves led them to the edge of the tree line, where they could see a small ranger station in a clearing, about 100 yards away. A green truck with a Forest Service logo was parked outside, and a man in uniform was visible through the window. The wolves stopped, refusing to venture from the cover of the trees. Emma understood this was as far as they could take them. She knelt before the magnificent creatures, overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "We won't forget you." Lily reached out, her small hand hovering inches from the smaller wolf's head. To their amazement, the wolf stepped forward, allowing the brief touch. Its companion maintained a respectful distance, but held Emma's gaze in a way that seemed to convey a message. "Be brave. Be strong. Remember." Then, as silently as they had appeared, the wolves turned and melted back into the forest, leaving the sisters at the threshold of a new chapter in their lives. Emma took a deep breath, squeezed Lily's hand, and together they stepped out of the shadows and into the light, walking steadily toward the promise of safety and the hope of a better tomorrow. Ranger Thomas Jenkins had seen many strange sights during his 15 years of service in Glacier National Park, but the appearance of two young girls emerging from the wilderness that Tuesday morning ranked among the most unexpected. He'd been completing paperwork when movement outside the station window caught his eye. At first, he thought they might be hikers' children who had wandered ahead on the trail, but their disheveled state and the absence of adults quickly dispelled that notion. "Sweet Jesus," he muttered, pushing back his chair and rushing to the door. The girls stopped about 20 feet from the station, uncertainty written across their dirt-smudged faces. The older one stood protectively in front of her sister, her posture tense and wary, despite the exhaustion evident in her slumped shoulders. "Hello there," Thomas called, keeping his voice gentle as he approached slowly. "Are you two all right?" The older girl swallowed hard before speaking. "We need help, please. My sister and I, we got lost." Thomas knelt to their level, noting the angry red marks on their wrists, the scratches on their arms and legs, and their overall state of neglect. These weren't simply children who had wandered off a trail. Something far more concerning had happened. "I'm Ranger Jenkins, but you can call me Thomas. What are your names?" "I'm Emma Parker. This is my sister, Lily." Her voice was steady despite her obvious fear. "Well, Emma and Lily, why don't you come inside? I've got some hot chocolate and first aid supplies. We can get you cleaned up and figure out what happened." Lily peered around her sister, her eyes wide. "Are there phones? We need to call Grandma Rose." Thomas nodded, his heart breaking at the hope in her small voice. "Yes, we have phones. Come on in." Inside the station, Thomas busied himself preparing hot chocolate while the girls sat huddled together on a bench. He noticed how they flinched at sudden movements and how Emma's eyes constantly darted to the exits, mapping escape routes. It spoke volumes about what they had endured. After providing them with blankets and warm drinks, Thomas gently began to ask questions. Emma was hesitant at first, but as Lily's eyelids grew heavy and she dozed against her sister's shoulder, the older girl began to speak more freely. She told him about their mother's disappearance 3 months ago, how they had been sent to live with their Uncle Ray in his isolated cabin near the park's northern boundary. She described in halting sentences his escalating anger, the punishments that grew more severe, and finally being tied to a tree and abandoned in the forest. Thomas felt a cold anger build inside him as he listened, but kept his expression neutral for Emma's sake. "And how did you find your way here?" he asked. "That's quite a journey through difficult terrain." Emma glanced at Lily's sleeping form, then back to Thomas. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You won't believe me." "Try me," he said with a gentle smile. "I've seen some pretty incredible things in these woods." "Wolves," Emma said after a long pause. "2 wolves found us. They freed us, led us here." Thomas's eyebrows rose. While wolves were indeed present in the park, they typically avoided humans. The idea of them approaching bound children, much less freeing and guiding them, seemed fantastical. Yet the sincerity in Emma's tired eyes gave him pause. "Wolves, huh?" he said carefully. "I know it sounds crazy," Emma said defensively, "but it's true. They chewed through the ropes and showed us which way to go. They stayed with us all night, kept us warm. They brought us food." Her voice broke. "They were kinder than our own uncle." Thomas reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and patted her hand. "I believe you, Emma." And strangely enough, he did. The wilderness held mysteries that defied explanation, moments of connection between species that couldn't be rationalized away. He'd had his own inexplicable encounter with a mountain lion years ago that had spared his life when he was injured on a backcountry trail. "Let's call the authorities and your grandmother," he said, rising from his chair. "We'll make sure you and Lily are safe now." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Park police arrived, followed by county social services. Emma repeated her story several times, omitting the wolves when speaking to anyone but Thomas, instinctively knowing that not everyone would understand. Lily woke and clung to her sister, overwhelmed by the sudden attention from strangers. By late afternoon, their situation had become clearer. Their grandmother, Rose Mackenzie, lived in Whitefish, about an hour's drive away. She had been searching for the girls since their mother's disappearance, but had been told by Ray that they were staying with other relatives. The police had already dispatched officers to Ray's cabin, and social services was arranging emergency placement for the sisters while their grandmother was contacted. "I want to stay with Thomas," Lily whispered to Emma, as a kind-faced social worker named Mrs. Winters explained that they would be going to a temporary foster home. Emma squeezed her sister's hand. "We need to go with Mrs. Winters for now, Lily, but Grandma Rose will come soon." Thomas, who had been quietly monitoring the proceedings, stepped forward. "Actually," he said, addressing Mrs. Winters, "I'd like to suggest an alternative." He explained that his sister, Sarah, ran a licensed foster home just outside the park. "The girls have been through enough today. If it's possible, I'd feel better, knowing they were somewhere familiar, with someone I trust." Mrs. Winters considered this, then nodded. "I'll make some calls. That might be the best solution for tonight, at least." 2 hours later, Emma and Lily found themselves at Pine Haven, the small farm owned by Sarah Jenkins and her husband Mark. Unlike the stark, utilitarian cabin of their uncle, Pine Haven was warm and welcoming, with a wraparound porch adorned with hanging plants and wind chimes that tinkled softly in the evening breeze. Sarah, a woman in her 40s with laugh lines around her eyes and the same kind demeanor as her brother, welcomed them with open arms, but without overwhelming physical affection, sensing their need for space. "We've got a room all ready for you two," she said, leading them inside. "And Daisy's made some of her famous apple pie." Daisy turned out to be a cheerful 14-year-old with braided hair and braces, who greeted them with shy smiles. "I'm so glad you're here," she told them as she showed them to a cozy bedroom with 2 twin beds covered in colorful quilts. "It gets lonely being the only kid sometimes." Emma remained guarded, but Lily began to relax slightly in the warmth of this unexpected sanctuary. After a simple dinner where no one pressed them to talk more than they wanted, the sisters were shown to their room. The beds were soft, the sheets smelled of lavender, and a small nightlight cast a gentle glow that kept the darkness at bay. As Emma tucked Lily in, her sister whispered, "Do you think the wolves are okay?" Emma smoothed back Lily's hair, a lump forming in her throat. "I'm sure they are. They know the forest better than anyone." "Do you think they'll come find us here?" Emma hesitated, not wanting to crush her sister's hope, but knowing they needed to adjust to their new reality. "I don't know, Lily. But we'll never forget them, right?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Never, ever." As the girls settled into sleep, outside, in the darkened yard, 2 shadows moved along the perimeter of the property. Amber eyes gleamed in the moonlight as the wolves circled the farmhouse once, twice, ensuring that their charges were truly safe. Then, with one last look at the window where a small nightlight glowed, they melted back into the wilderness, unseen by human eyes, but leaving behind paw prints in the soft earth as proof of their vigilance. Dawn broke with the sound of roosters crowing and the distant lowing of cattle. Emma woke disoriented, momentarily panicked until she remembered where they were. Lily still slept soundly in the next bed, her face peaceful for the first time in months. Emma slipped quietly from beneath the covers and padded to the window, drawing back the curtains to reveal a view of rolling pastures backed by the majestic mountains of Glacier National Park. Movement in the yard below caught her eye. Sarah was hanging laundry on a clothesline, while Mark split wood near a shed. Daisy was feeding chickens from a bucket, laughing as they clucked and scrambled around her feet. It was a scene of such ordinary domestic peace that Emma felt a physical ache in her chest. This was what home should feel like, safe, warm, filled with simple purpose. A flash of grey near the tree line made her breath catch. She pressed closer to the glass, straining to see. For just a moment, she thought she glimpsed a familiar form, the silver-grey coat, the proud stance, but it was gone so quickly she couldn't be certain. "Emma?" Lily's sleepy voice called from behind her. "What are you looking at?" Emma turned from the window, offering her sister a small smile. "Just the mountains. Come see, Lily. It's beautiful here." Lily joined her at the window, her small hand slipping naturally into Emma's. They stood together in silence, watching the morning unfold on the farm, each lost in their own thoughts, but anchored by each other's presence. A soft knock at the door preceded Sarah's voice. "Girls, are you awake? Breakfast is ready whenever you are." "We'll be right down," Emma called, surprised by how normal her voice sounded. Nothing about their situation was normal, yet somehow, in this place, with these people, she felt a tentative sense of stability. Downstairs, the kitchen was filled with the scent of bacon and pancakes. Mark, a tall man with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard, nodded to them as they entered. "Morning, ladies. Sleep well?" Lily nodded shyly, while Emma murmured a polite, "Yes, thank you." "Your grandmother has been contacted," Sarah informed them as she placed plates of food before them. "She's driving up from Whitefish and should be here by noon." Emma felt a rush of relief so intense it made her dizzy. Grandma Rose, with her soft hugs, her cookie-scented kitchen, and her unwavering strength, the one adult who had always made them feel safe and loved. The prospect of seeing her again was almost too much to bear. "And the police called," Mark added, his tone gentler now. "They found your uncle. He won't be able to hurt you anymore." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. Lily, less burdened by understanding, simply continued eating her pancakes, swinging her legs beneath the table. "Can I show them the new calves after breakfast?" Daisy asked her parents. "They're so cute." Sarah smiled. If Emma and Lily would. Like that, yes. And so the morning passed in a blur of small, healing moments. Daisy proudly introduced them to the farm animals. The new calves, with their wobbling legs and curious eyes, the horses that nickered softly when offered handfuls of grass, the barn cats that wound around their ankles, purring for attention. Lily laughed out loud when a goat kid tried to chew on her shoelace, the sound so unexpected and pure that Emma felt something tight within her chest begin to loosen. Throughout it all, Emma found herself drawn to the edges of the property, her eyes scanning the forest beyond. Each time, she told herself she was being foolish, that the wolves had fulfilled whatever mysterious purpose had brought them to help the sisters and had returned to their wild lives. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still watching, still guarding. At midday, the crunch of tires on gravel announced a visitor. Emma and Lily were helping Sarah gather eggs from the hen house when a small blue sedan pulled into the driveway. The car had barely stopped when the driver's door flew open and a woman emerged. Not tall, but somehow filling the space with her presence. Her silver-streaked auburn hair was pulled back in a hasty bun, and her face showed the lines of recent worry. But her eyes, the same hazel as Emma's, were bright with emotion. "Grandma!" Lily cried, dropping her basket of eggs and racing across the yard. Emma stood frozen, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of feeling. Sarah placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Go on, honey, it's okay." And then Emma was running too, her legs carrying her across the distance until she collided with her grandmother's embrace, Lily already wrapped in her other arm. The scent of rose water and cinnamon enveloped them, so familiar it brought tears streaming down Emma's face. "My girls, my precious girls," Grandma Rose murmured, her voice breaking as she held them tight. "I've been searching everywhere for you." In that moment, surrounded by her grandmother's arms, with Lily pressed close beside her, Emma finally allowed herself to believe what had seemed impossible in the dark hours tied to that tree in the forest. That they were truly safe, that the nightmare was over, that somewhere in the vast wilderness, two remarkable creatures had altered the course of their lives through an act of inexplicable compassion. As if summoned by her thoughts, a lone howl echoed from the distant mountains, a sound both wild and hauntingly beautiful. The adults didn't seem to notice, but Emma and Lily exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. Their protectors were saying goodbye, or perhaps Emma thought as she looked back toward the mountains, it wasn't goodbye at all, but a promise that some bonds once formed transcended the boundaries between worlds. A reminder that even in the darkest forest, unexpected guardians might appear to guide lost children home. 6 months had passed since the day Emma and Lily Parker had emerged from the wilderness into the safety of Ranger Thomas Jenkins Station. Summer had given way to fall, and fall had surrendered to the crisp embrace of a Montana winter. Snow blanketed the landscape around Grandma Rose's cozy 2-story home on the outskirts of Whitefish, transforming the world into a pristine canvas of white. Emma stood at her bedroom window, watching snowflakes drift lazily from a pearl gray sky. At 10 years old, she had always been serious and observant, but the events of the past year had left their mark, adding layers of caution and wisdom beyond her years. The physical scars on her wrists had faded to thin white lines, but other wounds ran deeper, manifesting in nightmares that still occasionally woke her gasping for breath, convinced she was back in the forest, bound and abandoned. "Emma!" Lily's voice called up the stairs, breaking through her reverie. "Grandma says it's time for hot chocolate, and Miss Diane is here." Emma smiled, turning from the window. "Coming!" she called back. Downstairs, the kitchen radiated warmth and the mingled scents of cinnamon, chocolate, and wood smoke from the fireplace in the adjacent living room. Lily, now 8, sat at the table, her legs swinging as she carefully arranged marshmallows on top of her hot chocolate. Her copper-colored hair had grown out from the uneven cut Uncle Ray had given her during one of his rages, and now hung in loose curls past her shoulders. Grandma Rose stood at the stove, her capable hands stirring something in a pot. Beside her was Diane Matthews, the sister's therapist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a talent for drawing out the fears and hopes that children often couldn't articulate. "There she is," Grandma Rose said warmly as Emma entered. "Just in time. The hot chocolate is perfect." Emma slid into her chair, accepting the steaming mug with a quiet, "Thank you." She had grown more reserved since their ordeal, speaking less but observing more. Where Lily had largely bounced back, embracing their new life with Grandma Rose, with the resilience of youth, Emma carried the weight of their experience more visibly. "I was just telling your grandmother about the art therapy exhibition next month," Diane said, taking a seat across from Emma. "The community center has offered their gallery space, and I think your wolf paintings would be perfect to include." Emma looked up, a flicker of interest crossing her face. Art therapy had been Diane's suggestion, a way for Emma to process her feelings when words failed. From the first session, Emma had drawn wolves, sometimes in pencil, sometimes in vibrant acrylics, always with a haunting accuracy that captured not just their physical form, but something deeper, a kind of sacred intelligence in their amber eyes. "You think people would want to see them?" Emma asked quietly. "I think they're extraordinary," Diane replied. "And I think sharing your art might help other children who've gone through difficult experiences." Emma considered this. She was protective of her wolves, feeling a strange sense of ownership and responsibility toward the memory of the creatures who had saved them. Yet there was also a growing desire to honor them somehow, to ensure their remarkable act of compassion wasn't forgotten. "I'll think about it," she finally said. Grandma Rose smiled approvingly, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "No pressure, sweetheart. It's entirely your choice." The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Lily's upcoming school Christmas pageant, where she had been cast as a snowflake, the holiday baking Grandma Rose was planning, the community carol singing in the town square that weekend. Normal, everyday matters that had once seemed impossibly out of reach, when the girls were living under Uncle Ray's unpredictable rule. After Diane left, promising to return next week for their regular session, Emma helped Grandma Rose wash the mugs while Lily went to the living room to work on her pageant costume. "Something on your mind, Emma?" Grandma Rose asked gently as she handed a mug to Emma for drying. Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Grandma, do you think animals can understand things, like really understand the way people do?" Grandma Rose considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think animals understand a great deal," she said slowly. "Maybe not in the same way we do, with words and thoughts like ours, but they have their own kind of knowing." She set down the sponge and turned to face her granddaughter. "This is about the wolves, isn't it?" Emma nodded again. She had told Grandma Rose, the full story of their rescue, the wolves' deliberate freeing of their bonds, the way they had led the girls to safety, provided food, kept them warm through the night. Unlike some of the adults who had questioned them, Grandma Rose had never doubted their account. "I keep thinking about them," Emma admitted. "I wonder if they're okay, if they're still out there. Sometimes I feel like they're still watching over us somehow." Grandma Rose dried her hands and led Emma to the kitchen table, sitting down beside her. "My own grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, was part Blackfeet," she said. "She believed that every creature had a spirit and a purpose. She taught me that wolves were special, protectors of the land, and sometimes of people who were meant for important things." Emma's eyes widened. "You never told me that before." "There are many things I haven't had the chance to tell you yet," Grandma Rose said with a small smile. "But perhaps now is the time for some of those stories." She reached for a small wooden box on the shelf above the table, opening it to reveal a collection of old photographs and trinkets. She selected a faded black and white photograph and handed it to Emma. "This is my grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, Standing Fawn." Emma studied the photograph with fascination. The woman had high cheekbones and dark, penetrating eyes that seemed to look right through the camera into Emma's soul. Despite the formal pose, typical of old photographs, there was something untamed about her, a connection to something ancient and powerful. "She told me once that her life had been saved by a wolf when she was a girl," Grandma Rose continued. "She'd wandered away from her family's camp and fallen into a ravine. A wolf found her and stayed with her, keeping her warm through the night until her father found her the next day. From then on, she believed wolves were her spirit guardians." Emma's heart raced. "Just like us," she whispered. Grandma Rose nodded. "Just like you, Standing Fawn believed that such encounters weren't accidents. She said that once a wolf had chosen to protect you, that bond remained forever, even across generations." "Do you believe that?" Emma asked. "I believe there are mysteries in this world that we can't fully explain," Grandma Rose replied. "And I believe that what happened to you and Lily in those woods was one of those mysteries." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the tick of the kitchen clock and Lily's humming from the living room. Then Grandma Rose spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "You know, there's a conservation center about an hour from here, the Wolfhaven Sanctuary. They rescue wolves that can't survive in the wild, injured animals, those raised in captivity, that sort of thing. They also work to protect wild wolf populations in the Northern Rockies." Emma's interest was immediately piqued. "Could we visit?" "I don't see why not. I'll make some calls tomorrow." Grandma Rose returned the photograph to its box. "Now, I believe you have some math homework waiting?" Emma groaned, but didn't argue. She had learned that stability came with certain expectations, homework, chores, bedtimes, and she found an unexpected comfort in these routines. As she gathered her books from her backpack, her mind was already full of wolves, of her great-great-grandmother Standing Fawn, and of connections that spanned generations and species. 3 days later, Emma, Lily, and Grandma Rose pulled into the parking lot of the Wolfhaven Sanctuary. The visitor center was a rustic log building nestled among pine trees, with educational displays visible through its large windows. Emma felt a nervous flutter in her stomach as they approached. Since their rescue, she had developed a complicated relationship with their experience, grateful beyond words for their survival, yet reluctant to revisit the trauma in any way. "You okay, sweetie?" Grandma Rose asked, noting her hesitation. Emma nodded, just a little nervous. "We can leave any time you want," Grandma Rose assured her. Inside, they were greeted by a friendly woman named Claire, who introduced herself as one of the sanctuary's education coordinators. "We're so glad you could visit today," she said. "We have a small tour group about to start, if you'd like to join." The tour began with an informative presentation about wolf biology, behavior, and the challenges facing wolf conservation efforts. Emma listened with rapt attention, absorbing every detail. Lily, though less focused, perked up when Claire mentioned that wolves are highly social animals with complex family structures. "They take care of each other," Lily said with certainty, "just like people families are supposed to." Claire smiled. "That's exactly right. Wolf packs are very devoted to their members, especially to the young ones." After the presentation, their small group was led outside to a series of large naturalistic enclosures where the sanctuary's resident wolves lived. As they approached the first habitat, Emma felt her heart quicken. A large grey wolf lay on a rocky outcropping, its amber gaze fixed on the visitors with apparent disinterest. "This is Takoda," Claire explained. "He was found injured by a highway when he was about 2 years old. We think he was struck by a vehicle. His leg healed, but not well enough for him to survive in the wild, so he's made his home here." Emma stared at Takoda, searching for any resemblance to the wolves that had saved them. While his coloring was similar, she knew instinctively that this wasn't one of their wolves. Still, there was something in his dignified bearing that resonated with her memories. They moved on to several more enclosures, meeting wolves with names like Sierra, Midnight, and Thunder. Each had its own story. Some born in captivity, others rescued from illegal ownership, a few recovered from injuries. With each encounter, Emma felt a growing sense of connection, not just to these specific animals, but to wolves as a species, as if she were glimpsing pieces of a larger picture that she was somehow part of. The final enclosure on their tour housed a pair of wolves, a silver-grey male and a slightly smaller female with a darker coat. Emma stopped short, her breath catching in her throat. Though she knew logically that these couldn't be their wolves, the resemblance was striking. "These are Ghost and Shadow," Claire said. "They're our newest residents, brought to us about 5 months ago after being found near a poacher's camp in Glacier National Park. The poacher had been targeting wolves, but fortunately, rangers apprehended him before he could harm these two." 5 months ago, Emma whispered, her mind racing with calculations. Claire nodded. "Yes, it was early June, I believe." Emma and Lily exchanged a meaningful glance. The timing aligned perfectly with their rescue, which had occurred in late May. "Where exactly in the park were they found?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "I'm not sure of the exact location," Claire replied, "but I know it was in the northern section near the Canadian border." Again, the location matched. Emma moved closer to the fence, her eyes locked with Ghost's. The wolf stared back, his amber gaze intense and assessing. For a breathless moment, Emma felt a surge of recognition so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. Could it be possible? Could these actually be their wolves? As if in answer to her unspoken question, Ghost rose from his resting place and approached the fence, moving with the same deliberate grace Emma remembered from the forest. He stopped just a few feet away, his nose twitching as he caught her scent. Beside him, Shadow also approached, her dark eyes fixed on Lily. "Wow," Claire said, sounding impressed. "They're usually much more reserved with visitors. They must sense something special about you girls." Lily, less constrained by doubt than her sister, whispered, "It's them, Emma. I know it's them." Grandma Rose placed a supportive hand on each girl's shoulder, saying nothing but offering her steady presence as they processed this remarkable coincidence. If indeed it was only coincidence. After the tour concluded, Emma asked if they could stay a little longer near Ghost and Shadow's enclosure. Claire agreed, though she had to leave to prepare for the next tour group. Just remember not to put your fingers through the fence, she reminded them before walking away. Left alone with the wolves, Emma finally allowed the tears she'd been holding back to fall. "I think it's really them," she said quietly to Grandma Rose. "I can feel it." Grandma Rose nodded. "I think you might be right. There's something in the way they look at you both." "But how?" Lily asked. "How did they end up here?" "Claire mentioned poachers," Emma reasoned, her mind working through the possibilities. "Maybe they were being tracked or hunted because they were in that area. Maybe they were trying to find us again." The thought filled her with both wonder and sadness. Wonder at the depth of connection they seemed to share with these magnificent creatures. Sadness that the wolves' freedom had been compromised, possibly because of their interaction with the sisters. As if sensing her thoughts, Ghost made a soft whining sound, pressing closer to the fence that separated them. Emma knelt down, careful not to touch the barrier, and spoke softly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving us. I'm sorry you're here now, but I promise we'll come back to visit you. I promise we won't forget." For the briefest moment, she could have sworn she saw understanding in Ghost's amber eyes, the same understanding she had glimpsed in the forest when her life had hung in the balance and an unlikely guardian had appeared to alter her fate. On the drive home, the girls were unusually quiet, lost in their own thoughts. It was only when they were nearly back to Whitefish that Lily spoke up from the back seat. "Grandma, can we do something to help the wolves? Not just Ghost and Shadow, but all of them?" Grandma Rose glanced in the rearview mirror, her expression thoughtful. "What did you have in mind, sweetie?" "I don't know exactly," Lily admitted, "but they helped us when we needed it. Now maybe they need our help." Emma turned in her seat to look at her sister, struck by the simple wisdom in her words. "She's right, Grandma. We should do something." That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Emma sat at the kitchen table with a notebook sketching ideas. Grandma Rose joined her, bringing 2 mugs of tea. "I've been thinking," Emma said without looking up from her drawing, a remarkably detailed portrait of Ghost and Shadow, about what Diane said about the art exhibition. "I want to do it now, but not just with my paintings. I want to tell our story, or at least part of it." Grandma Rose regarded her granddaughter carefully. "Are you sure, Emma? You don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with." Emma nodded, a new determination in her eyes. "I'm sure. People need to know how special wolves are, how intelligent and compassionate they can be. Maybe if more people understood, there wouldn't be so many poachers, so many wolves in danger." Grandma Rose reached across the table and covered Emma's hand with her own. "I think that's a wonderful idea, and I think your great-great-grandmother would be very proud of you." Emma smiled, feeling a connection not just to her ancestry, but to something larger, a web of relationships between humans and the natural world, between past and present, between trauma and healing. And for the first time since emerging from the forest 6 months ago, she felt a sense of purpose taking root within her. The wolves had given her and Lily a second chance at life. Now it was her turn to give something back. Outside, snow began to fall again, coating the world in fresh white. Somewhere in the distance, a lone howl echoed through the night, perhaps from a wild wolf roaming the mountains, perhaps just the wind playing tricks on the imagination. Emma paused in her sketching to listen, feeling the sound resonate deep within her chest, a reminder of bonds that could not be broken by distance or circumstance. "I hear you," she whispered to the night, "and I promise I won't forget." 5 years had passed since that winter day when Emma and Lily first visited the Wolfhaven Sanctuary. The small town of Whitefish had continued its quiet rhythms through changing seasons, and the Parker sisters had grown from frightened children into confident young teenagers. Emma, now 15, had developed a lanky grace that matched her thoughtful nature, while 13-year-old Lily had blossomed into a vivacious girl whose copper curls and ready laugh made her a favorite among her classmates. Their lives with Grandma Rose had settled into a comfortable pattern of school, friends, and the occasional therapy session with Diane, though these were now more check-ins than necessary interventions. The nightmares that had once plagued Emma had largely subsided, replaced by dreams of running through moonlit forests alongside silver shadows. Uncle Ray had eventually been sentenced to prison for child endangerment and neglect, a chapter of their lives that they acknowledged but refused to let define them. On this particular Saturday in late May, exactly 5 years since their rescue, Emma stood before an easel in the sunroom Grandma Rose had converted into a studio for her. Through the large windows, she could see the mountains in the distance, still capped with snow despite the warming temperatures in the valley. Her current painting depicted 2 wolves standing atop a rocky outcrop, their postures alert and dignified, against a backdrop of twilight sky. "That's amazing, Em," Lily said from the doorway, a glass of lemonade in each hand. She crossed the room and handed one to her sister. "Is it for the sanctuary's new visitor center?" Emma nodded, taking a sip of the tart, cold drink. "They want it for the main display. Claire says it will be the first thing people see when they walk in." The Wolf Haven Sanctuary had become an integral part of their lives over the years. What had started with Emma's art exhibition had evolved into a full-fledged commitment. The sisters volunteered there regularly, with Emma helping to create educational materials and Lily assisting with younger visitors. Ghost and Shadow had become their special charges, and the bond between the girls and the wolves had only deepened with time. "Are you almost ready to go?" Lily asked, glancing at her watch. "The ceremony starts at 2. Emma put down her brush and surveyed her work. "Just need to add a few finishing touches. I'll be ready in 20 minutes. Today was a significant milestone. The official opening of the sanctuary's expanded rehabilitation center, a project that had been years in the making. Through fundraising, efforts that had begun with Emma's art show and grown to include community-wide involvement, the sanctuary had been able to purchase additional land and build state-of-the-art facilities for injured wolves. Grandma Rose appeared in the doorway, car keys in hand. "Just got off the phone with Claire. Everything's set for the surprise." Emma smiled, a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. "I still can't believe it's finally happening." "No one deserves it more," Grandma Rose said warmly. "Now hurry up, or we'll be late for your big moment." An hour later, they arrived at the sanctuary to find the parking lot already filled with cars. The once modest visitor center had been expanded and renovated, with a new wing dedicated to education and another to rehabilitation services. A crowd had gathered in front of a ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new facilities, and at the center stood Claire, now the sanctuary's director, speaking with a tall man in a Forest Service uniform, Thomas Jenkins, who had remained a steadfast friend to the Parker family. Emma felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to find Diane smiling at her. "Proud day," the therapist said. "From traumatized child to conservation hero in 5 years. It's quite a journey." Emma blushed at the description. "I'm no hero," she protested. "I just did what needed to be done." "Isn't that the definition of heroism?" Diane countered gently. Before Emma could respond, Claire spotted them and waved them over. "There they are, our guests of honor." As they made their way through the crowd, Emma was struck by how many familiar faces she saw. Sarah and Mark Jenkins, who had provided that first safe haven, Daisy, now in college but home for the summer, Mrs. Winters from Social Services, Classmates and teachers, neighbors and friends, all had contributed in some way to the sanctuary's expansion project, often inspired by the story of two young girls and the wolves who had saved them. Claire welcomed them warmly, then turned to address the gathered crowd. 5 years ago, an extraordinary event occurred in our community. Two young girls, lost and alone in the wilderness, were saved by a pair of wolves who defied every expectation of wild animal behavior. Most of you know this story, how Emma and Lily Parker were guided to safety, how the wolves who rescued them later found sanctuary here as Ghost and Shadow. There was a murmur of acknowledgement from the crowd. The story had become something of a local legend, especially after Emma's art exhibition had brought it to public attention. What began as a simple rescue has evolved into something much more profound, Claire continued. Through the efforts of these remarkable young women, their grandmother Rose Mackenzie, and countless community members, Wolf Haven Sanctuary has been able to expand our mission and reach. Today, we celebrate not just the opening of new facilities, but the power of connection between species and the difference that compassionate action can make. Emma listened with a mixture of pride and humility. Their journey had indeed been remarkable. From those terrifying hours bound to a tree in the forest to this moment of community celebration. The path hadn't always been easy. There had been setbacks in their healing, challenges in their advocacy work, and the inevitable skeptics who questioned their story. But through it all, they had persevered, driven by a sense of purpose that transcended their personal experience. After Claire's speech and the ceremonial ribbon cutting, the crowd dispersed to tour the new facilities. Emma, Lily, and Grandma. Rose, however, were led by Claire to a private area behind the main enclosures. "Are you ready for the big moment?" Claire asked, her eyes twinkling with excitement. Emma nodded, her heart racing. More than ready. They followed Claire to a large, fenced area nestled against the edge of the National Forest. Unlike the viewing enclosures, this space was designed as a transition habitat, a halfway point between captivity and the wild. Within it, Ghost and Shadow moved with the fluid grace that had never diminished despite their years at the sanctuary. "All the paperwork has been approved," Claire confirmed, unlocking a small gate. "The tracking collars are in place, and the Forest Service has established a protected corridor from here to the heart of the park." She turned to Thomas, who nodded his agreement. "We've coordinated with rangers throughout the region," he added. "They'll be monitoring from a distance, but otherwise Ghost and Shadow will be on their own, as they should be." Emma approached the gate, emotion tightening her throat. After years of rehabilitation, after countless hours spent with these magnificent creatures, the day had finally come for Ghost and Shadow to return to the wild. It had been Emma's dream since realizing that these were indeed the wolves who had saved them, to give back the freedom that had been compromised potentially because of their intervention in the sisters' lives. "Can I?" she began, gesturing toward the enclosure. Claire nodded. "Go ahead. Take your time saying goodbye." Emma entered the transition habitat, Lily close behind her. The wolves approached immediately, their recognition evident in their relaxed postures and direct gazes. Over the years, Emma and Lily had been granted special permission to interact with Ghost and Shadow under supervision, building a relationship that defied conventional understanding of wolf-human dynamics. Emma knelt before Ghost, meeting his amber eyes. "Today's the day," she said softly. "You're going home." The wolf regarded her steadily, his intelligence apparent in his focused attention. Beside him, Shadow pressed close to Lily, who had tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to say goodbye," Lily whispered. "It's not goodbye," Emma assured her, reaching out to gently stroke Ghost's thick fur. "It's thank you." It's giving back what they gave us, a chance at freedom, at the life they were meant to have. For several minutes they remained in quiet communion with the wolves who had altered the course of their lives. Emma remembered that moment in the forest when Ghost had first approached them, how fear had given way to an inexplicable trust. She thought of all that had followed, the nightmares and the healing, the art and the advocacy, the gradual transformation of trauma into purpose. "You saved us," she whispered to Ghost. "Now it's your turn to be saved." With a final embrace of each wolf, the sisters retreated to where Claire, Thomas, and Grandma Rose waited. Claire held a remote control device that would open the far gate of the enclosure, the gate that led not to another part of the sanctuary, but to the wild expanse of protected forest beyond. "Ready?" Claire asked. Emma took a deep breath, then nodded. "Ready." Claire pressed the button, and with a soft mechanical whir, the gate began to rise. Ghost and Shadow turned toward the sound, their postures immediately alert. For a long moment they hesitated, looking back at the humans who had been their caretakers and companions for 5 years. "Go on," Emma encouraged, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "It's okay." As if understanding her words, Ghost took a step toward the open gate, then another. Shadow followed, her movements equally deliberate. At the threshold between captivity and freedom, they paused once more. Ghost turned his head, his gaze finding Emma's across the distance that separated them. In that look was a wisdom and awareness that transcended species, a recognition of the full circle they had traveled together. Then, with powerful grace, the wolves loped through the gate and into the forest beyond, their silver-grey forms quickly disappearing among the trees. The humans watched in reverent silence as Ghost and Shadow reclaimed their birthright, returning to the wilderness that had shaped them. "They'll be okay, right?" Lily asked, wiping away tears. Thomas nodded confidently. "They're healthy, they know how to hunt, and they're in protected territory. The tracking collars will let us know if they run into any trouble, but I suspect they'll do just fine." "More than fine," Emma added softly. "They'll be free." As they walked back toward the main sanctuary buildings, Emma felt a complex mixture of emotions. Joy for the wolves' return to their natural habitat, sadness at the physical separation, but overwhelmingly a sense of completion. 5 years ago, Ghost and Shadow had intervened to save 2 frightened children. Today, those same children, now growing into young women, had ensured the wolves' return to the life they deserved. The afternoon continued with tours of the new facilities, speeches from conservation officials, and a community reception. Emma's painting of Ghost and Shadow was unveiled in its place of honor in the visitor center, alongside a tastefully presented version of their story. Visitors listened with rapt attention as Emma and Lily recounted their experience, many visibly moved by the account of interspecies compassion and the years of advocacy that had followed. As the event wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Grandma Rose approached her granddaughters with a mysterious smile. "There's one more surprise," she said. "Thomas wants to show us something." Curious, they followed the ranger to his truck. "It's about a 20-minute drive," he explained as they climbed in. "But I think you'll agree it's worth it." He drove them along winding forest roads until they reached a small, unmarked trailhead. "We'll have to walk from here," he said, retrieving a pair of binoculars from the glove compartment. "And we'll need to be very quiet." The trail led them up a gentle slope through thick pine forest. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the canopy, creating dappled patterns on the needle-covered ground. After about 10 minutes of hiking, Thomas slowed, signaling for silence. They crept forward until they reached a small clearing on a ridgeline that overlooked a vast expanse of wilderness. "There," Thomas whispered, pointing to a rocky outcropping across the valley. He handed the binoculars to Emma. She adjusted the focus, then gasped softly. There, exactly as she had painted them countless times, stood Ghost and Shadow. The wolves had traveled miles in just a few hours, instinctively seeking higher ground. To survey their new territory, they stood proud and alert, their silver-grey coats gleaming in the slanting light, the very embodiment of wild dignity. Emma passed the binoculars to Lily, who let out a small sound of delight upon seeing their former charges, looking so perfectly at home in the landscape. "They've already found their place," Thomas observed quietly. "Some animals struggle with the transition, but not these two. It's like they're remembering rather than learning." "They are remembering," Emma said with certainty. "This is where they belong. This is who they were always meant to be." As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting the mountains in hues of gold and amber, a sound rose from the distant ridge, the howl of a wolf, pure and piercing, against the vast silence of the wilderness. It was joined by a second voice, and together they created a harmony that echoed across the valley, a song of freedom and belonging that resonated in the very air around them. Emma closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. In that moment, she felt the completion of a circle that had begun 5 years ago in terror and was ending now in triumph. The wolves who had once saved 2 lost children had themselves been saved, returned to the wild where they could live according to their true nature. Later, as they drove back to Whitefish in the gathering dusk, Lily leaned her head against Emma's shoulder. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" she asked sleepily. Emma gazed out the window at the darkening forest. "I don't know," she answered honestly, "but I think they'll always be with us in some way." Grandma Rose, overhearing from the front seat, smiled. "Your great-great-grandmother would say that some bonds transcend physical presence," she remarked, "that once you've been touched by the spirit of the wolf, that connection remains forever." Emma nodded, finding comfort in the thought. The tangible presence of Ghost and Shadow in their daily lives might be ending, but the impact of their brief intersection would continue to ripple outward. In the expanded sanctuary, in the educational programs the sisters had helped develop, in the changing attitudes toward wolf conservation in their community, and in their own lives, shaped forever by that moment in the forest when 2 unlikely guardians had appeared to alter their fate. As they pulled into the driveway of their home, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Emma stepped out of the truck and paused, looking up at the vast expanse above. Somewhere in the mountains, under these same stars, Ghost and Shadow were exploring their new freedom, perhaps hunting, perhaps still howling their joy to the night. "Thank you," she whispered to the cosmos, to whatever mysterious force had brought the wolves to them that day in the forest. "Thank you for the second chance, for all of us." Lily appeared at her side, slipping her hand into Emma's as they had done countless times since they were small. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Emma squeezed her sister's hand. "I was just thinking that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. If we hadn't gone through what we did, Ghost and Shadow might never have been rescued from the poachers, the sanctuary might never have expanded. So many good things came from something so terrible." Lily considered this with the simple wisdom that had always characterized her. "I think that's how life works sometimes," she said. "The bad stuff doesn't go away, but it gets woven in with the good stuff until you can't really separate them anymore. They're just all part of the same story." Emma smiled, struck once again by her sister's insight. "You're right, Lil, it's all part of the same story." And what a story it had been, from abandoned children to conservation advocates, from wounded souls to healers, from being saved to becoming saviors. The circle was complete, yet in another sense, it was just beginning. Ghost and Shadow were starting a new chapter in the wild, while Emma and Lily were continuing to write their own story, forever influenced by the wolves who had changed their lives. As they walked into the house together, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. The past could not be changed, but it could be transformed. Just as fear could become courage, pain could become purpose, and a moment of unexpected compassion in a dark forest could ripple outward to create waves of positive change that no one could have anticipated. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, perhaps Ghost, perhaps Shadow, perhaps another wild voice altogether. The sound drifted on the night breeze, a reminder of wilderness and freedom, of bonds that could not be broken and mysteries that would never be fully explained. Emma smiled as she closed the door behind her, carrying the echo of that wild song. In her heart, a melody that would continue to guide her through whatever challenges and triumphs the future might hold. Dear listeners, we hope the journey of Emma and Lily, alongside their wolf guardians, has touched your heart as deeply as it has touched ours. Some bonds transcend understanding, reminding us that compassion can be found in the most unexpected places. If you were moved by this tale of courage, healing, and the incredible connection between humans and animals, please subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, and share in the comments which moment brought tears to your eyes. Remember, even in our darkest hours, sometimes a silent guardian is watching, waiting to guide us home. Join our community, where we honor these powerful stories of hope emerging from shadows.